The attachment that destroys you is not your desire for love, money, or recognition. It is your secret belief that you don't deserve them. This is the invisible chain that binds you to suffering, the quiet conviction that you are fundamentally, lacking eternally in debt to existence itself. You chase what you believe you cannot have. You cling to what you think you might lose. And in this desperate grasping, you create the very unworthiness you fear. The beggar does not let go of his cup because he believes he is a beggar. The prisoner does not walk through the open door because he has forgotten he was ever free. But what if your unworthiness is the grandest illusion you have ever been sold? What if the very thing you think makes you human is actually what keeps you from being alive? What if every moment of suffering, every sleepless night of anxiety, every relationship that crumbled under the weight of your need, what if all of it stems from this single devastating lie that you are somehow less than what you should be? The cosmic joke is that unworthiness is the most worthy feeling you can have in a society built on scarcity. It makes you the perfect consumer, the ideal believer, the ultimate seeker. Your pain becomes their profit. Your lack becomes their abundance. Your unworthiness becomes the foundation upon which entire industries of salvation are built. From the moment you drew breath, they whispered to you that you were born in debt. Religion told you that you were stained, fallen, in need of salvation from sins you never committed. Education taught you that you were ignorant, empty vessels requiring constant filling from authorities who had somehow transcended the human condition. Society convinced you that you were insufficient, incomplete, always one achievement away from being enough, one purchase away from fulfillment, one relationship away from wholeness. This conditioning runs deeper than thought. It lives in your bones, in the way you apologize for taking up space, in the way you question every moment of joy as if it were stolen from someone more deserving. You learned to earn love instead of receive it, to deserve peace instead of inhabit it, to pursue worthiness instead of recognizing it as your birthright. The cruelest trick is that this unworthiness disguises itself as humility, as spirituality, as virtue. You think your self-denial makes you noble. You believe your suffering makes you worthy of compassion. You mistake your smallness for righteousness, your fear for wisdom, your self-hatred for moral purity. But look closer at this so-called humility. Watch how it operates in your daily life. The way you diminish your successes while amplifying your failures. The way you deflect compliments while collecting criticisms like precious stones. The way you sabotage opportunities because some part of you believes you don't deserve them. This is not humility. This is violence against your own soul, dressed up in the clothing of virtue. Your unworthiness is not spiritual. It is the ego's most sophisticated trap. It keeps you perpetually reaching, perpetually needing, perpetually attached to anything that might finally make you whole. The unworthy self cannot let go because it believes it has nothing to let go from. It cannot surrender because it thinks it has nothing worth surrendering. It cannot die because it believes it has never truly lived. And so you become addicted to your own inadequacy. You feed on comparison, gorge yourself on judgment, starve yourself of self-compassion. You become so invested in your story of lack that abundance terrifies you more than poverty. Freedom scares you more than chains. Love frightens you more than loneliness, because if you are truly lovable, then what excuse do you have for not loving yourself? Alan Watts understood what the mystics have always known. Attachment is not born from having too much, but from believing you are too little. The Tao that can be grasped is not the eternal Tao, precisely because grasping arises from a fundamental misunderstanding of what you are. You are not a separate fragment of consciousness trying to reconnect with wholeness. You are wholeness itself, temporarily forgetting its nature. The wave is not separate from the ocean. It is the ocean expressing itself as wave. Your unworthiness is like a wave trying to become wet, a flame trying to become fire, a note trying to become music when it already is the song. In Zen, they speak of the original face you had before your parents were born, the face of your essential nature, untouched by the story of lack. This face knows no unworthiness because it knows no separation. It needs nothing because it lacks nothing. It grasps nothing because it is already everything. It seeks nothing because it has never been lost. The Buddhist understanding of dukkha, suffering, points not to the inherent painfulness of existence, but to the suffering that arises from believing in the reality of separation. When you think you are a separate self that must earn its place in the universe, suffering is inevitable. But when you recognize that you are the universe knowing itself through temporary human form, suffering reveals itself as a case of mistaken identity. The Hindu concept of Maya, illusion, is not that the world is unreal, but that our perception of it as separate from ourselves is the grand deception. The snake you fear on the path is revealed to be a rope when you look closer. The unworthiness you carry is revealed to be a shadow when you turn toward the light of direct experience. Even Western philosophy, in its most profound moments, has glimpsed this truth. Spinoza spoke of substance, the one reality expressing itself as infinite modes. You are not a mode trying to become substance, you are substance expressing itself as this particular mode of being. Your unworthiness is like water trying to become H2O, a category error of the most fundamental kind. The philosophical truth is startling in its simplicity. You cannot be unworthy of what you already are. The river cannot be unworthy of being water. The sun cannot be unworthy of giving light. And you cannot be unworthy of the consciousness that is reading these very words, the awareness that is aware of being aware, the being that is being itself through you right now. Here is the radical virtue that emerges when unworthiness dies, the virtue of natural abundance. Like the sun that gives its light not from obligation but from its very nature, you begin to give and receive from the overflow of your being, not from the poverty of your neediness. This new virtue does not strive to be worthy. It simply is. It does not earn love, it radiates it. It does not seek approval. It flows from its own fullness. When you know yourself as inherently complete, attachment dissolves not through effort but through understanding. You hold things lightly because you know you are not holding them at all. You are the space in which they appear and disappear. From this place of natural abundance, you love without possessing, you give without depleting, you receive without guilt. Your relationships become play rather than need. Your work becomes expression rather than performance. Your life becomes poetry rather than prose written by someone else's expectations. The worthy self, the self that knows its inherent completeness, cannot be attached because it has nothing to prove, nothing to gain, nothing to lose. It moves through life like water through a landscape, taking the shape of whatever it encounters while never losing its essential nature. But this worthiness is not what you think. It is not the worthiness that comes from achievement, from moral purity, from spiritual attainment. It is the worthiness of existence itself, the simple fact that you are here, now, breathing, aware, part of the infinite dance of being. A tree does not earn its right to grow toward the sun. A bird does not deserve its ability to fly, and you do not need to justify your place in the cosmic order. This recognition transforms everything. The desperate grasping for approval becomes unnecessary because you no longer need others to validate what is already true. The fear of loss becomes groundless because you recognize that you cannot lose what you have never been separate from. The anxiety about the future dissolves because you realize that you are not going anywhere. You are here. You have always been here. You will always be here in the eternal now of conscious experience. Watch how this new virtue expresses itself in the ordinary moments of your life. When someone criticizes you, instead of defending or deflecting, you listen with the curiosity of someone who has nothing to protect. When someone praises you, instead of inflating or dismissing, you receive it as a flower receives rain, naturally, without analysis, without the need to hoard or reject. Your body begins to move differently when it is no longer carrying the weight of unworthiness. Your shoulders drop, your breathing deepens, your step lightens, even your voice changes. It carries the resonance of someone who belongs in their own skin, who has permission to take up space, who speaks from fullness rather than emptiness. In a conversation, you no longer perform. You no longer calculate what will make you liked, what will make you impressive, what will keep you safe from judgment. You simply show up as you are, trusting that your authentic presence is enough, not because you have convinced yourself of your worth, but because you have stopped arguing with the obvious fact of your existence. This is the virtue of the mountain that does not apologize for its height, the river that does not ask permission to flow, the star that does not dim its light to make others comfortable. It is the virtue of being exactly what you are, exactly where you are, exactly when you are, without reservation, without apology, without the exhausting performance of trying to be someone else. Money flows differently when you are no longer trying to buy your worth with it. Success arrives differently when you are no longer using it to prove your value. Love manifests differently when you are no longer trying to earn it through sacrifice or manipulation. Everything becomes effortless because you are no longer swimming against the current of your own nature. The most radical aspect of this virtue is how it treats failure, rejection, and loss. Instead of confirming your unworthiness, these experiences become teachers, mirrors, opportunities for deeper understanding. You fail without becoming a failure. You are rejected without becoming rejectable. You lose without becoming lost. The events of your life no longer define your essence. They simply dance across the surface of your being like weather across the face of the sky. This is not arrogance. It is the deepest humility. It is the recognition that you are not special because you are better than others, but because you are the same as everything else. Temporary expressions of the eternal, waves in the infinite ocean of being, notes in the cosmic symphony that plays itself through every form of life. When unworthiness dies, what remains is not a person who has become worthy, but worthiness itself, playing at being a person. The game changes completely. Instead of trying to become something you are not, you simply express what you have always been. Instead of seeking love, you give it. Instead of pursuing happiness, you recognize it as your natural state. Instead of trying to find God, you realize you are the way God experiences being human. And here is the ultimate paradox. This virtue that arises from worthiness cares nothing about being virtuous. It acts from its nature, not from its image. It gives because it overflows, not because giving is good. It loves because love is what it is, not because love is what it should do. This is virtue beyond morality, goodness beyond rules, righteousness beyond religion. It is the spontaneous expression of wholeness that has remembered itself. But even this virtue of natural abundance must be held lightly. Even the recognition of your inherent worth must eventually dissolve into the silence from which it arose. The ego that claims enlightenment is still an ego. The self that grasps its own completeness has missed the point entirely. True freedom comes not from believing you are worthy, but from the recognition that worthiness and unworthiness are both movements in the same dream. The wave that knows it is ocean must eventually dissolve back into the depths, leaving no trace of its temporary form. The flame that recognizes itself as fire must still be extinguished when the candle burns down. The note that knows itself as music must still fade into silence when the song ends. This is the ultimate letting go, not just of your attachments, but of your attachment to non-attachment, not just of your unworthiness, but of your worthiness. Not just of your seeking, but of your finding. Not just of your story of separation, but of your story of unity. In the end, even the one who is free must disappear into the freedom itself. The sage who has transcended the illusion of unworthiness must also transcend the achievement of having transcended. The Buddha who has awakened must also let go of being awake. The lover who has found union must also release the finding. This is not a return to ignorance. It is the movement beyond both ignorance and knowledge into the silence that contains and transcends both. The silence that follows this dissolution is not empty. It is pregnant with infinite possibility. It is the womb from which all experiences arise and to which they return. It is the space in which worthiness and unworthiness, attachment and detachment, self and other dance their eternal dance without a dancer. This silence is not the absence of sound, it is the fullness from which all sounds emerge. It is not the absence of experience, it is the awareness in which all experiences appear. It is not the absence of self, it is the self that was never born and therefore can never die. From this silence, you emerge not as someone who has overcome unworthiness, but as no one in particular who has never been unworthy. The game of seeking ends not in victory but in laughter. The laughter of recognizing that you were never playing a game at all. You were always the field in which the game appeared to be played. The ultimate joke is that there was never anything to transcend, never anything to overcome, never anything to become worthy of. There was only the appearance of separation, the dream of lack, the story of a self that needed to earn its right to exist. And when that story ends, what remains is what was always already here. The silent awareness in which all stories appear and disappear like clouds in an empty sky. The invitation is simple. Step into the silence where your unworthiness was born and watch it dissolve like mist in the morning sun. Not as a practice, not as a method, not as another thing to achieve, but as a recognition of what has always been true beneath the noise of your thinking. This is not about becoming someone new. This is about recognizing who you have always been, beneath the layers of conditioning, beneath the stories of lack, beneath the belief that you need to earn your right to be here. You do not need to become worthy. You need to stop believing you are unworthy. If these words have touched something in you, if they have stirred the memory of your original face, if they have awakened even a whisper of recognition, then write in the comments, "I am the silence that dissolves all questions of worth." Let this be your commitment to the truth that needs no proof, your dedication to the worthiness that needs no earning, your surrender to the abundance that has always been your nature. The path forward is not a path at all, it is a falling away of everything that was never real. Continue exploring these depths not to find answers but to discover that you are the space in which all questions arise and dissolve. Read more, watch more, listen more, not to add knowledge to your collection, but to subtract illusions from your perception. Your unworthiness was the last attachment, the final illusion, the ultimate story that kept you bound to suffering. When it dies, nothing remains but the eternal dance of being, and you are both the dancer and the dance, the silence and the song, the question and the answer that was never needed. The cup is empty. The prison door is open. The beggar realizes he was always the king. The seeker discovers she was always home. The unworthy one awakens to the worthiness that was never absent, never diminished, never in question. Step into the silence. You are already home. You have always been home. You could never be anywhere else.